Señor va contenta, va bajando la luz.
Jehová envía tu poder, Señor, vamos toda plata que va. Desde pueblo se soras, el
Señor va contenta, va bajando la luz.
Jehová envía tu poder, Señor, vamos toda plata que baje y el poder de Dios solo da Dios, damos toda plata que baje.
En 1979, la revolución sandinista acabó con la dictadura de los Somoza y Nicaragua se convirtió en uno de los focos de atención más importantes del mundo. La revolución vino a cuestionar el control de los Estados Unidos sobre la región centroamericana y abrió la posibilidad para la construcción de un proyecto político diferente. Fue la participación y el rol no tradicional que asumieron las mujeres en el proceso revolucionario lo que primero llamó mi atención. Me fui a vivir a Nicaragua en 1990, justo después de que los sandinistas perdieron las elecciones. Fue la presión política y económica de los Estados Unidos a través de la guerra civil prolongada y el hambre lo que llevó a los votantes a apoyar la coalición de oposición antisandinista. Una nueva táctica de control de los Estados Unidos sobre la región, denominada ajuste estructural, fue aceptada por este gobierno. Para las mujeres nicaragüenses, esta receta les implicó desempleo e inseguridad a todo nivel. Sus hijas e hijos se vieron forzados a sobrevivir en las calles de Managua. Regresé a Nicaragua para las elecciones de 1996 con 41 mujeres de todo el mundo para formar la primera misión internacional de mujeres observadoras de las elecciones. Esta delegación fue el resultado de las redes internacionales que las mujeres hemos establecido a través de nuestra participación en las actividades del Movimiento Mundial de Mujeres. El fin de nuestra delegación era darle seguimiento a la implementación de los derechos internacionales por los cuales hemos luchado las mujeres. Fuimos más allá de ser meras observadoras. Nuestro interés era intercambiar con las mujeres nicaragüenses las diferentes perspectivas del poder en lo personal y lo político.
And this has been the first international women's delegation that I've been a part of. And it's like, where have these women been all of my life? You know? Because not only do they affirm a lot of the work that I've been doing and other women, you know, that I'm with have been doing, but they give me new possibilities, you know, things that I have thought of and toyed with and said, no, that's crazy. I see them doing it and achieving it and dreaming the same dreams, and it's wonderful.
There's something that is very burning in my heart, and it is to see women begin to define for themselves their concept of power, what power is, and talk about power so much that they internalize it and begin to believe that there's power and that there's space for them to assume power.
Una de mis mayores aspiraciones es que las mujeres del mundo nos demos la mano sin importarnos el color ni la ideología que nosotros tengamos, simplemente que sea el anhelo de conquistar nuestros derechos como mujeres.
Una de las organizaciones anfitrionas, Puntos de Encuentro, organizó un simposio que nos dio la oportunidad de conocer alrededor de 500 mujeres de diferentes lugares de todo el país. Con ellas discutimos los avances y estrategias para incrementar nuestro conocimiento y poder político en nuestros países.
Now, one of the things I would like to share with you, because we're talking about elections here, and how women should get involved into the whole process of election, is that we always ask our country and our government what they have done to the women. And I think constantly we are being challenged by that question without exactly asking ourselves what we should be doing as women.
Autonomous women's movement is almost a condition for a thoroughly democratically structured society.
When you put women and you make them get into the political processes, the movement of women loses something.
And again, I share my friend from South Africa. We really feel that the political parties really betrayed the Palestinian women.
Y a mí me duele mucho la división de mi partido. Me duele demasiado y por eso yo no me nombro sandinista de aquí ni sandinista de allá. Soy mujer revolucionaria y voy a defender los derechos de Sandino en cualquier opción. Y hablemos mejor de la autonomía de la mujer y no de los partidos que a eso hemos venido.
I had a lot of things against me. I had no money. I didn't have the education that some of the candidates that were running against me had. I had very little. But one thing I knew I had was the confidence in the people, in my abilities.
The main issue in MU is the National Union for Trained Youth and Students is to fight for women's rights. I mean, the abuse of the rights, which is, culture oppression, and that's it, female genital mutilations.
Yo creo que es importante que reconozcamos realmente nuestro papel y nuestro poder. No basta con decir que somos mujeres y tenemos derechos. Es imprescindible disponernos a ejercer esos derechos y a capturar efectivamente las estructuras de poder.
Las relaciones y reencuentros que surgieron entre nosotras fueron parte integral de la delegación. 2 mujeres, Nora y María, revivieron una experiencia sucedida hace 14 años. Ellas se conocieron en 1982 en un campo de refugiadas en Honduras, donde María estaba entrenando alfabetizadoras y Nora estaba buscando un lugar seguro para esconderse de los escuadrones de la muerte hondureños. Apenas se conocieron, fueron desaparecidas y llevadas a una serie de prisiones clandestinas donde fueron torturadas y una de ellas violada. No fue sino en el contexto de esta delegación donde ellas pudieron finalmente compartir sus historias y apoyarse mutuamente. Hoy en día, Nora está demandando a su gobierno y María será una de las testigas del horror que ambas vivieron.
Boom, boom, didi boom, 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 didi boom, boom.
Anoche yo pude revivir el dolor y aflorarlo a la piel con el testimonio de las compañeras africanas, que puchica también nos devolvieron a la cárcel, nos devolvieron al dolor, a la fuerza.
When you came for me at 2 in the morning, I was shocked. I was sleeping and I thought, I am so young and so small, why the guns? You did not only took off my blankets, you did not only forced me into your van, but you wanted to take everything from me. We went into prison. You took your photos. You said left, right, face this way, and all along I was thinking boom, diddy boom, 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 diddy boom, boom. And all I had taken with me was a small photograph of my grandmother. And you said, for your safety, we shall keep this. And I wondered, what harm could the picture of this woman be to me? I asked you. You said you might swallow it in attempting suicide. You cut my exercise time. You came in the morning. You said, do you need anything? And I wondered what you meant by saying, do you need anything? Because you took everything. And I realized that in fact, I needed nothing from you because I had everything I wanted. And all I had and all I wanted was boom, boom, diddy boom, 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 diddy boom, 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 diddy boom, 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 diddy boom, boom.
Como iniciativa del Movimiento de Mujeres y en respuesta a la situación política de Nicaragua, mujeres de diversas ideologías se reunieron para formar una agenda mínima no partidaria y demandar así sus derechos básicos.
Y aquellos problemas en los cuales hubo consenso están en la agenda mínima que llegamos a firmar y que hemos firmado más de 3.500 mujeres nicaragüenses.
El mismo día de las elecciones, nuestra delegación se dividió en pequeños grupos para cubrir diferentes áreas del país. Hubo un retraso en la apertura de las mesas y mucha gente esperó muchas horas bajo el sol para poder votar. Para probar que se había votado, cada persona hundió su dedo en una tinta azul. Esta mancha se convirtió en un símbolo de paciencia y esperanza para quienes ejercieron su derecho al voto. Pero la confianza y paciencia se fue reduciendo una vez que empezó la recolección de los votos. El caos en la recolección de los votos generó acusaciones de fraude. Tomó 33 días de tensión antes de que el candidato derechista Arnoldo Alemán fuera oficialmente declarado presidente de la República.
Alianza.
El sentimiento de celebración del ejercicio del voto fue ocultado por una atmósfera de pérdida sobre todo de la confianza en el sistema político electoral. A pesar del histórico paso de la coalición de las mujeres y la gran cantidad de mujeres organizadoras y votantes, la representación de las mismas en el gobierno disminuyó con la derecha en el poder.
When you took this from me, my dignity, when you took my control and my power to make my decision, I thought you had taken everything and all I had was inside me. I keep it with me. My grandmother gave it to me. Boom, boom, diddy boom, 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 diddy boom, 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 diddy boom, boom.
Como mujeres y como actoras políticas, tenemos mucho que aprender y mucho que ofrecer en el contexto político local, nacional e internacional.
Entre los
struggle in South Africa, which culminated in the elections in 1994, was a struggle that started for more than about 300 years ago. We as the women in the ANC, as a feminist in South Africa, were very lucky that our struggle had taken so long because we had learned from other women. We had learned from your experiences that when it comes to issues of empowerment, when it comes to liberation struggle, women have to trust no one.
Now, one of the things I would like to share with you, because we're talking about elections here and how women should get involved into the whole process of election, is that we always ask our country and our government what they have done to the women. And I think constantly we are being challenged by that question without exactly asking ourselves what we should be doing as women.
En las elecciones de 1991, como continuación de esta campaña y a convocatoria de una organización de mujeres en lucha por la democracia que se había formado después de este fraude electoral, se construye la Convención Nacional de Mujeres por la Democracia, que reúne a mujeres de muchos partidos políticos, a mujeres del movimiento feminista y del movimiento de mujeres social en general. Entonces postulamos 45 candidatas mujeres de esta convención, candidatas de partidos políticos y candidatas sin partido político. Y empezamos la negociación de los partidos y creo que esta es la experiencia más importante que les quiero transmitir.
In most of cases, usually democratic elections take place after the governments have been established or are well established. But in the case of the Palestinians, our elections took place while we are still under the establishment of our state and our government. So this posed a lot of impediments and a lot of obstacles for us because the electoral process itself was fully controlled by the Israelis.
We were informed in our electoral strategies and approaches by three things. By the fact that the culmination of our struggle was a result of a journey that we as South Africans had gone through, a journey where white people were on the backs of black people, a journey where men in general were on the backs of women, a journey where people were coming from property classes were on the backs of poor people. We also learned from experiences elsewhere and from our own experiences that in talking about race, gender, and class, we needed to unpack it and also talk about issues of culture, issues of religion, issues of sexuality, and issues of ethnicity. We took a conscious decision that our electoral strategy was going to be informed by this, and central to it was a notion of power as an engendered relationship.
Now, one of the things we realized in the women's movement in the Philippines was that despite the fact that we had an independent, autonomous women's movement, we were always saying when we have our own liberation movement, that the women's movement has to be in a way independent and autonomous, and yet at the same time integral to the whole struggle of the liberation movement.
La negociación con los partidos políticos era, queremos un puesto, queremos un lugar en tu lista, porque la única manera de participar es a través de los partidos políticos, pero no firmamos tu plataforma electoral.
So women were really excluded from these constituencies which had 1 or 2 or 3 seats. Even the political parties, and again, I share my friend from South Africa, we really feel that the political parties really betrayed the Palestinian women, the members of these parties who have been visible all over or all through the national struggle. Even these political parties hesitated in the beginning about having women in their list.
We have today a constitution that informed our elections. We have a constitution that is one of the most gender-sensitive constitutions in the world. It is the one and the only constitution that talks about issues of sexuality
in the whole world.
And one of the major things which I would like to share with you, and for my sisters also in other countries who are here with us, was the thing that we did set up our own women's political party. This was in 1985, right after, Marcos called for a snap election. I'm sure many of you are very aware of the fact that we tried to kick out Marcos after 20 years of dictatorship and multitudes of human rights violations that was done to our people. And when he called for a snap election, we in the women's movement have decided to take certain course into our own hands. And by doing that, we have decided to set up our own women's political party, which was very progressive.
Lo más importante de nuestra posición era que frente a estos argumentos nuestra autoestima, nuestra dignidad era verdaderamente arrolladora de, de ofrecerles a esos partidos votos, pero no solamente votos, sino toda la propuesta de esta propuesta feminista tan maravillosa para una sociedad. Nos empezamos a jugar, nosotros queríamos los primeros puestos en la lista, en algunos partidos pequeños incluso nos proponíamos jugarle al candidato hombre, antes de ser registrado, campañas, digamos, en un partido dijimos, ¿quién reúne en 8 días 25,000 firmas? ¿Él o nuestra candidata? Finalmente no aceptaron nuestro reto, estaban como en la duda de qué tal sí, y entonces nos ganaríamos el primer lugar.
Maybe the last strategy I need to talk about, that women's movement were very active in the civic education campaigns in the election or electoral process. And this made a big difference, because you know that the percentage of illiterate women is 30 almost, but for men is 12. So it was difficult for all these illiterate women to read all these pamphlets and banners and leaflets that were spread all over.
Today in South Africa we have national machinery. The Gender Commission is part of that, which is going to be a commission that is going to monitor the whole process of ensuring that the gains that we've made in the Constitution are not lost. We have the Office on the Status of Women, which is in the Deputy President's office. We have gender focal points in different departments. We have about 117 women in Parliament, 27.5% of women in Parliament. We have 5 cabinet ministers. We have 8 deputy ministers. But one thing that we have learned from your experience, Nicaraguan women, from the experience of other women, the Mozambican women, the Zimbabwean women, is that even the constitutional guarantees that we have are no guarantees.
Now, there were many gains in this. One, in many meetings, as most elections, you would have all these meetings every night. We had the platform to talk about women's issues, which we would have never had. If we were a member of a mainstream political party, we will just be one of the speakers, and so would be the other women. In this case, it was our own rally, and we were talking about women's issues. And for the first time, people were listening to women talking about national issues, and they have been taken seriously. And so, the process of that has in many ways empowered the women and have made the people aware of the fact that women are very political, we have an issue, and we are comprehensive enough to deal with it and to be responsible enough to go through with it.
But I have to tell you that Palestinian women are now really at a junction, and they have lots of alternatives in front of them, and this is what we always tell men in our country, that we have alternatives. We don't have just one alternative, so don't count on that. Thank you very much.
The one issue that I feel strongly about is that when you put women and you make them get into the political processes, the movement of women loses something. And this is
in a minute what I want to share with you, that we have lost as a women's movement in terms of the leadership that has gone into government. We have also lost our own vibrancy and passion because we've had suffered a very serious identity crisis as feminists in South Africa, where people have said, what do you want? You've got everything in the Constitution. We are in the process of repositioning ourselves to defend our gains.
Pero también me gustaría, ¿verdad?, que tocaran de qué manera ustedes lo han experimentado dentro de sus países, las contradicciones que han tenido, que se han tenido victorias, pero se han tenido contradicciones, se han tenido pérdidas de sus líderes, pero de qué manera se van apuntando hacia un crecimiento también del movimiento de mujeres para poder superar todo ese duelo.
We have said to people that it is important that we understand the multiplicity of voices within the movement, and that no single woman or no single group of women can speak for all women in the organization. I think that even when you come from the same context, from the same village, when you're confronted with the same issue, that there are no two experiences against of sexism that can be entirely 100% similar. And I think for us the challenge is to acknowledge that and to know and to talk upfront about the fact that part of the battle is very intimate, it's very personal, but part of the battle, and even that part of the battle, in fact, which is so personal and private, is also political. What we did as ANC women then were two things. A, we acknowledged, and that is why I ended my own talk with paying tribute to women that have gone before us, that have paved the way, because I think it is important, particularly because some of the women are actually post-middle age or middle age, and it's a very sensitive age that people feel. So it is important for us, particularly as young feminists, when we come to the movement, to hold that process very gently and to know that ours is not to eradicate and to undermine the struggles that other people have waged, particularly women, but to reinforce it. The second aspect of it has been to say that, for example, myself, I am a feminist and I am in the ANC. And for very specific reasons in my country, I decided not to move out of the ANC. I still am part of it, but I'm also part of an independent movement in my country. And at times, I have had to challenge my own organization very openly. Sometimes it's been very painful. And I think that part of a way of resolving that contradiction that we have in ourselves is for women to stop feeling guilty for being angry and to stop feeling guilty for the passion that we feel around our issues. I personally feel that in my 28 years of my life, about 14 and a half years, I actually spent in the struggle. I therefore am entitled to critique the positions that I do not agree with. And on some issues, I will go out and seek alliances outside of the ANC and talk to other women on issues around which we agree. Abortion has been one such issue in my organization. Issues of sexuality have been one such issue. The issue of ethnicity and national question in terms of oppression of women, black women in particular, has been such an issue.
Nuestro partido es grande y amplio, y a mí me duele mucho la división de mi partido. Me duele demasiado, y por eso yo no me nombro sandinista de aquí ni sandinista de allá. Soy mujer revolucionaria y voy a defender los derechos de sandino en cualquier opción, y hablemos mejor de la autonomía de la mujer y no de los partidos que a eso hemos venido. Mire, nuestras mujeres en Nicaragua tenemos el 40% desempleada. Aquí hay un 70% de madres solteras en ese 50.80 que ocupamos. Y bien lo decía la compañera de Israel. De Israel lo decía, ellas han confiado de que ellas van a llegar a tener su propia autonomía, y están peleando por esa autonomía de lucha. ¿Por qué no lo podemos hacer las mujeres? ¿No fuimos capaces de incorporarlo a una lucha guerrerista? ¿Y a dónde estamos? Fuimos las mujeres las principales en esa lucha y que los hemos dejado quitar espacio. Sí, los hemos dejado quitar espacio porque somos muy fraternalistas como madre, como hermana, como mujer. Nos hemos venido mangoneando por los hombres. Hoy tenemos que dejar eso y decirle a los hombres, basta ya de tanto mandato. Somos las mujeres las que vamos a sacar adelante este país nuestro y el de nuestras hermanas aquí unidas.
It's really very motivating to speak after our comrade, the revolutionist. And I always thought that the Palestinian women are very revolutionary. But what I found here that exactly what I expected to find in Nicaragua, that there are very militant, very strong revolutionary women here.
I'm absolutely inspired by the militancy and the atmosphere here. But I must also tell you that in 1982 to 1989, when we had a state of emergency, when we were fighting in our country, I, as the education and training officer, we did workshops on the women in Nicaragua, and we were inspired by what you were doing. I must also say that in our country, we have the tradition, before we speak, we always sing a song, or we say a slogan. So I'm just going to say the slogan, Malibongwe Gavana Makosikazi. And that means, praise be to the name of the women.
I was just discussing with my colleague from Zimbabwe that the women's group, I cannot stand here this afternoon and say we have a strong women's support system in Zimbabwe, because we do not have that. We have individual women, like myself, like Eunice, like Jane Mutasa and a couple of others, who have a plan for the women of Zimbabwe. They know where they're going, they know how they want to get there, but they are not a united group of women. And I was really challenged this morning when I was listening to what's happening in Nicaragua and in other parts of the world, where the women's movement is so strong in what they believe in. Now, I want to say that maybe also the division that we have in Zimbabwe comes about because of cultural perceptions amongst women, and I find that especially amongst our rural women. And my dad comes, well, he died in 1990, but he came from the rural area, and I can't go like the rural area and tell my aunt she shouldn't be a second wife. She'd call that interfering. In fact, she'd tell me that it's totally not done. She enjoys being a second, third, and fourth wife. So we have those kind of things culturally as well.
Ocurre que la autoridad de la región interoceánica es un organismo, una entidad estatal autónoma que tiene que decidir qué vamos a hacer con cada pulgada cuadrada de ese territorio que revierte a Panamá de manera total e íntegra al 31 de diciembre de 1999 por virtud de los tratados Torrijos-Carter, que fueron firmados en 1977. Y yo soy miembro de ese equipo de ciudadanos panameños que tenemos la gran responsabilidad histórica de tomar esas decisiones. Solo somos dos mujeres.
Por mi parte, puedo decirles que vengo del Perú. Occidente, Pacífico Sur, en que, y ustedes podrán comprender mi condición de mujer y de negra, los obstáculos que tuve que vencer a doble tracción como mujer y como negra. Pero sí puedo decirles a ustedes que si el Perú, un país de 22 millones de habitantes, un país en el que indudablemente la naturaleza y Dios han puesto lo mejor que tenemos en el continente, hemos tenido la mala suerte de tener una democracia sui generis muy particular. En mis investigaciones, que como periodista, como abogada o como maestra he podido hacer, he llegado a esta conclusión. Quizás sea una voz solitaria, que el Perú es un país estructuralmente racista y etilista.
You see, there was always a tension in the gay and the lesbian movement. Some of us wanted small organizations that were social, where we could meet other people and be free. But then people said, no, we're not going to get anywhere. We have to have a political voice. And that is when the gay and lesbian organizations started forming political activist forums, where they saw the parallel between the oppression of black people, the oppression of women, the oppression of disabled people, with their own oppression. And that was a strong need for them, because what they then did, they formed a national coalition, hundreds of organizations, sometimes consisting of 5 people. Some people were completely in the closet, but they all came together. And what they then did is, now this is an important thing too, just like the Women's Coalition, they had allies. They had individual women who were part of negotiation. They formed an alliance with those women. So too did the Gay and the Lesbian Coalition form alliances with individual leadership members of the African National Congress. And they had people to come and speak to their meetings. And it's through that alliance and those pressures that today we have the Constitution that says there should be no discrimination against people irrespective of race, class, ethnic background, whether they're disabled or not, what their gender is, but also what their sexual preference is. And I must say it was a long and a hard battle. It's not easy. But there are times where you need to see what are your aims and how to go ahead with that.
And I'm glad to say, I'm standing here this afternoon, that the men in my council take me very seriously. Very. If I'm having a council meeting and they just try to heckle and interject, I just assert my authority. I tell them, councillor, if you're not going to respect the chair, then I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And that's the way it's done. And they listen.
I think the other very exciting process was actually being part of writing a constitution. I think that's one of, the greatest things in my entire life, that you actually could write things and send it to your constitution.
Pero ocurre que una vez siendo miembro de la Junta Directiva y se va a decidir la estructura interna que lo ha de gobernar, viene un colega director y me dice, estamos pensando en fulano para presidente y fulano, y creemos que tú podrías hacer un buen papel de secretaria. Y yo dije, bueno, no dudo que yo pueda hacer un buen papel de secretaria, pero fíjate que yo quiero ser vicepresidenta de la Junta Directiva. Bueno, realmente yo espero que tú no estés pensando con esas cosas feministas ahora de la igualdad de la mujer, pero yo creo que tú estarías bien de secretaria. Además, yo no te veo como vicepresidenta de la Junta Directiva. Y yo digo, bueno, yo lo siento porque tú tengas tal problema de visión. Pero yo quiero que tú sepas que yo voy a ser la vicepresidenta de la Junta Directiva.
And the wonderful thing about our government was that they advertised on television, on radio, on billboards, in newspapers, what do you want in a new South Africa? Come and say what you want. And I think the South African people rose to the occasion and wrote what they wanted. And I think that constitution today is the sum total of the efforts of all those people in the rural area, in the small towns, in the big cities, to contribute to that constitution.
Y no crean ustedes que yo respiro por la herida. No, al contrario. Hago todo lo posible porque no haya resentimiento en mis palabras y en mis actitudes. Pero sí puedo decirles que tuve que aguantar 22 años de subempleo.
We had women in parliament who were seasoned activists, who were academics. But we also have in parliament women from the rural area who have organized the Rural Action Committee in the north of our country. But she can hardly even read and write. So these are the women that are in our parliament.
Y yo digo esto y cuento esta experiencia porque luego de escuchar a mis compañeras y hermanas en el día de hoy, yo creo que es importante que reconozcamos realmente nuestro papel y nuestro poder. No basta con decir que somos mujeres y tenemos derechos. Es imprescindible disponernos a ejercer esos derechos y a capturar efectivamente las estructuras de poder.
Movimiento significa diferentes ritmos, diferentes espacios y diferentes lugares de trabajo, pero no nos descalifiquemos. Y mi posición es, no exijamos, no juzguemos a las mujeres que están luchando esos espacios de poder y que no es fácil. Y aquí, como decía la compañera de Sudáfrica, no es sencillo donde estaba ella luchando sus espacios de poder, pero nosotras apoyémosla y no la dejemos sola. En vez de juzgarla, vamos a pegarnos donde ella y a explicarle, mira, esta posición no es correcta, tenés que hacer esto.
Yo creo que la posición de la Milú en relación, aquí hay que acompañar a las mujeres con cargos de poder, es correcta, pero que las mujeres con cargos de poder se acerquen a nosotras, a las que las empujamos, para ver qué es lo que nosotros pensamos, de cómo queremos construir ese poder desde abajo y ellas desde arriba, porque ellas enfrentan contradicciones.
Entonces, yo creo que hay un problema que, por ejemplo, en el caso de Nicaragua no estamos superando, y es que cada mujer que está ocupada los cargos de poder ya representan a las mujeres, y yo creo que eso no tenemos por qué aceptar ese tipo de cosas. La representatividad se está construyendo cotidianamente y tiene que ser respaldada desde el movimiento de mujeres, y no solamente por el hecho de ser mujer. Gracias.
Entonces, el nuevo reto que debemos de tomarlo como estrategia es como pactar entre nosotras. El pacto entre mujeres nos cuesta hacerlo. Los hombres pactan fácilmente. Nosotras las mujeres tenemos que, ¿verdad?, ser constructoras también en un pacto de mujeres, reconociendo la diversidad de liderazgo y la diversidad de espacio en donde cada una de nosotras que estamos construyendo las diferentes formas de relacionarnos entre los dos géneros.
I think today has been very exciting. We need to emphasize South-South exchange because we can see how much we have to learn from one another. And I think it's important we can learn from North, but I think more importantly, the South-South exchange we need to emphasize. And lastly, I want to quote what one of the compañeros said, that we need to respect the different contributions that women can make, and each has her own step, her own tune. And that women are in power, need to be supported, but they must also be accountable to us. And I think we can go forward, each with our own tune, and make a mighty noise and change things. Thank you.
Mi nieto, yo soy abuela, de 9 años, le gusta jugar a las elecciones. Y estaba un día jugando a las elecciones, en donde él decía, bueno, él era el presidente, y él decía, bueno, le voy a dar zapatos a todos los niños pobres, y al resto le tocaba aplaudir y decir, ¡viva Martín! ¡Ahora! Todo. Y él dice, bueno, ahora, a una vecinita, ahora te toca a ti. Y la niña, que tenía 7 años, dijo, no, las mujeres no son presidentas. Entonces, no tiene modelo. Sin embargo, la primera ministra de Noruega contaba cómo un niño noruego llamó al Parlamento para preguntar, ¿un varón puede ser primer ministro de Noruega? Porque ella tiene 10 años en el poder.
Y me he dedicado a trabajar, después que me retiré de la Junta de Educación, con la liberación de los prisioneros políticos puertorriqueños. Y es un trabajo de conciencia, y es un trabajo militante, y es un trabajo arduo, porque requiere muchas horas de trabajo, especialmente cuando estamos trabajando en contra de un gobierno represivo como es el gobierno de los Estados Unidos.
This was the country which was built in revolution, and this is also the country which has eaten up, the revolution which has eaten up its children and especially its daughters.
I'm going to share with you our experience as Indigenous Women's Organization. I don't know if we are going to call it a movement already, but we would like to believe that we are planting the seeds of a movement of indigenous women in northern Philippines.
But just because autonomous, on my opinion, and also on my experience, my long-term feminist experience, autonomous women's movement is almost a condition for a thoroughly democratically structured society. Did we have it in former Yugoslavia? I'll tell you the truth, no, we didn't have it. I mean, we did have a women's movement, a feminist movement. The thing is that those groups which started the movement sometimes in the late 70s were connected among the different republics and regions of former Yugoslavia, but we did not have an independent women's movement.
Actually, I'm from a new place in East Africa called Eritrea. Eritrea is a country which has been fighting for more than 30 years for its struggle and independence.
Although we were very much aware that a certain amount of equity was given to us, that legal rights were given to us even in a much higher degree than to many women on the West, then that equal wages was something which was almost unquestionable, as a rule or as a law. I couldn't imagine somebody on a similar position as me in the newspapers having a higher wage. I mean, I would scream, I would make a local revolution immediately, and that would have been accepted. But let's see what was the real praxis and what was the real, the reality. The reality, of course, was that because of the double burden, despite the very well social infrastructure for women, women were not promoted to the professional hierarchy. Women were even not included in the party hierarchy. I would even say because they were more free-minded, even if they did approve and accepted the socialist model, they didn't want this hierarchical model of power, and they didn't want this hierarchical and very male model of communication, of the party language, of the whole rhetoric, which was very hierarchical and very patriarchal.
And the first thing that the American colonial government did was to declare, of course, the Regalian Doctrine was imposed by the Spaniard, and this was further enforced by the American colonial government, and they declared the land, all areas to be under forest reserve in our region. So they did not, as a forest reserve, of course, people should not be there, this is supposed to be conserved, etc. But they did not realize that there were people there. There were so many communities, there's self-sufficient, self-reliant communities already existing there. Of course, they knew that, but they wanted to erase our identity. So we became squatters in our own land. And then they passed the Mining Act of 1902. And this gave American corporations, mining corporations, equal rights as the Filipinos to exploit all of our mineral resources, to exploit our forest resources. So this has not changed until now. It has continued with the so-called takeover of Filipinos, of the Philippine government in 1945. This has not changed. And this is the context of a struggle. We're declaring squatters on our own land. So how can we cooperate with government? They are the ones who have taken away our lands from us. The concept of land that is being imposed on us is that of having a piece of title, a piece of paper. We say you can have your paper, but we will have our land. You can. The problem is, of course, many of us are also already co-opted into this kind of system because we have, with how many years, since 1900, we have been under the American educational system, public school system. So many of our values also have changed. Many of our traditions, which defines our relationship to our land, has already been eroded. That is why so the Cordillera, that is the region where I come from, is seen only as a resource base because we are very rich in minerals, hydropower, and forest resources. And in 1970, the Marcos government, the Marcos regime, tried to construct 4 dams along a big river in our region. And this sparked the opposition this sparked an opposition to this project, which reached violent proportions. And some of our people had to go underground, join the underground New People's Army. And it is because of people's resistance. By using their indigenous peace pact system, they were able to forge pacts of villages together to make this opposition. With this background, many of the activists in the mid-80s who already were into being exposed to the women's liberation movement then also came back home and tried to see if there is something that we can do for the Cordilleran women. And we found out that, of course, there's a lot to do. And we discovered that our women had a tradition of militant opposition to any incursion into our ancestral domain, ancestral lands.
With the war, with the tremendous need which appeared, especially with the 100,000s of refugees which were coming from Bosnia to Croatia, and the similar processes going on in Serbia and now in Bosnia, women's groups started to organize and to build from the basic democratic motives. And with the full awareness that with the free elections we've lost a lot. I've been all the time inspired with the face T-shirt saying that Indians are the prisoners of democracy in Canada. So sometimes we think that down there we are the victims of the first free and democratic elections which appeared in a very strange moment of the history, and which also appeared with the wave of the fall of the Berlin Wall, which, as someone said, did fall on the women's bodies and women's heads. Which does not mean that we didn't want that democracy. We did want democracy because we've learned that radical democratic concept is the only way to perceive your social reforms, not to be misled one day in traditional patriarchal power structures which are so well connected with dictatorship, but not only dictatorship, also the traditional state structure built only on the power.
Actually, we're dealing with young women from the age of 14 to 35, and the main issue in NUIS, the National Union for Trained Youth and Students, is to fight for women's rights. I mean, the abuse of the rights, which is, culture oppression, and that is female genital mutilations. And I'm one of the people who is doing these campaigns or participating in these campaigns. Really, Eritrea is a country which have two main religions, main basic religions, Islam and Christianity. With Christianity, we have the problem of this female genital mutilation because it's a culture in all, and we don't face a big problem in the highlands, but the main problem is in the lowlands where culture and religion oppress young women in general, and the religion practiced in the lowland is Islam. And the people there believe that all the religion, they have the religion belief that, women should be covered all around, cover all, and should get this female genital mutilation and sketched, and which, all, it's not good for their health, and they have a problem and get to the teenage. They when you get that period of menstruation and pregnancy, and they face a lot of problems, and a lot of people die there. Nearly 70 or 80% of the people in the lowlands who practice this female genital mutilation suffer from that thing. It's a horrible thing. my organization aim is to fight that thing.
I'm very much inspired with this, what's going on, and sometimes, as I said to a couple of our friends, to my friends, I was almost sad this morning, because as much as I was carried away from the energy and enthusiasm, even the language which women have appropriated here, when I think how low the energy in this very moment is back there, and how very much on the beginning we are in building our own structures and our own organizations, facing already all the problems you are facing, the conflicts among women, the interiorized patriarchal feelings, and all kinds of psychological barriers. I'm basically very much inspired, and I think we'll have to follow now many of these examples, and I am learning a lot. Thank you very much.
I learned a lot about Nicaragua. For me, Nicaragua just appears only in the map, and now, I've seen the people, I know a lot about Nicaragua and other different countries, and I know at least how the people of Nicaragua have struggled and just achieved that. There is similarity between the Nicaraguan women and the Eritrean women who fought for 30 years side by side with men to achieve a goal. A goal which has been achieved now, and we're still struggling to just work on to sustain that thing in Eritrea. Thank you.